Welcome to Android Authority on Air, the original Android Hangout show on Google+. I'm Derek Ross.
No, I'm Dan Charlton.
I'm Jonathan Franklin.
And as you can tell, Scott Anderson is not with us this evening. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here, but he's here in spirit, I'm sure. So let's get started and find out what we're going to talk about this evening. Well, as you know, pretty much the mecca of all Google and all Android things is happening in a few days in San Francisco. It's pretty much Christmas this year it's Christmas in May. And we're going to talk about what predictions, thoughts, expectations, what we want to see or what we think we're going to see here in a few days from Google at IO13. Then we'll find out that Bill Gates thinks that we're frustrated, and that sucks because we can't create documents on our Android devices. That he thinks we can't, so we'll talk about that. We got some app updates as usual. We're going to yell about some carrier stuff. They're doing LTE, because they've been doing that forever now. And we'll hit some devices. We're going to talk about some cool root stuff. I have CM 10.1 on my HTC Droid DNA, and we'll talk about some patents. So let's let's get started here. All right. So as we said, IO13 is in a few days. So what are we looking to see? What do we think we're going to see? What rumors and speculations can we put together, and hell, what do we want to see that we might not see? So Android 4.3, chances are it's coming, and chances are that's the version number. But version numbers really don't matter. It could be version 4.70.3. I don't really care. Version numbers don't mean anything. But we've seen various logs on our website as well as other Android news sites show Android 4.3 in the weblog. So chances are that's going to be the version number, but like I said, that doesn't really matter. So what do we think we're going to see with Android 4.3? Well, we know that a few months back on code.google.com, Bluetooth Low Energy or Bluetooth Smart was referenced. And that's a big thing because what uses and what needs Bluetooth Low Energy or BLE? Google Glass. And right now, there's no official support for Android, so that's a big thing. I mean, HTC has their own, Bluetooth Low Energy stack. Samsung's doing
HTC
it, but
has their own Bluetooth stack.
yes, and Samsung's doing it, but they're not the same. They don't work the same. So to have a unified stance on it, that's great. So we'll be able to have more Android devices support this down the road, since chances are they'll be using similar or the same code. So that's awesome. I'm excited for that. So we can highly speculate that that's coming. Since it was mentioned, it might, maybe, possibly be supported down the road. One thing I'd love to see that, unfortunately we can say that iOS does it better. iOS does do a thing or two better, not very many, but right now iOS backs up your app data. Yeah. So there isn't an official solution from Google to do this. Sure, your Wi-Fi will be backed up. It'll automatically restore all your apps from the Play Store. But when you're on level 72 of Angry Birds, that's not going to be backed up unless you download a third-party app and do it yourself. So it'd be nice to see an official stance on that. What do you guys think? Is that something that you want, to have your data automatically being backed up?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see a bit more of a unified approach from Google in terms of all of their data storage, right? You get usually around 10 gigabytes of storage in your Gmail. You get 5 gigabytes of storage in your Drive. You get unlimited storage in your pictures through Google+. You get another unlimited amount of storage for your contacts. You get another 20,000 songs worth of songs. It'd be nice if all of this was unified into Drive, just as separate special folders for each of these things that adhered to all of the different data limits. That way you could unify all of that stuff and have all of your data backups and have a lot more control over those backups. Because right now they sync sometimes, but it's not really clear when or how or where that data goes, and you don't really have any access to it after the fact. So if they exposed all of that and made it more, user-friendly and controllable, that would really give people all of that backup ability they need, as well as the unified access to everything through Drive.
Yeah, that's a big point. Another thing that even Chrome OS does better than Android does there in terms of Drive is Android needs a really good file manager from we think about how files are done in most of your desktop operating systems. If they had a file manager that really managed music and pictures, and because right now you're really depending on the independent apps to manage your media, where a really good file manager would alleviate a lot of that problem. And
no, absolutely.
If it had like an open API where even companies like Dropbox, if you use Box or something, could all tie into that one place, it would be a big, really good thing for Android to have just as a stock option for anybody.
Yeah, that'd be huge.
All right, so Android's huge. Obviously, we have no clue what's coming, what awesomeness is going to be bestowed upon us, but we do know something. So we do know that an Android gaming center is coming. There's a million signs out there. Google hired a gaming industry bigwig, and his title on LinkedIn was Android Play Studio, head or manager, for a while, and then it got changed. We've seen leaks from the My Glass app that had all sorts of code referencing Google games thanks to Android Police's amazing APK teardowns. And thanks to a new APK teardown, the new Google Services app that the Google Services app, for those who don't know, is the little green G icon. It has all of your Google services inside it, such as Google Plus.
For your Google apps.
Yeah, for your Google apps. It's a one-stop shop for all your Google app settings, basically, and the Google Plus sign-in and stuff like that. So a new version started rolling out to people, and when you rip it apart, decompile it, and start digging into it, Android Police found out that there's all sorts of game stuff out there, and that's how it's going to be delivered to you. They found stuff for notifications, matchmaking, leaderboards, achievements, invitations, and even cloud syncing your game data. So that's kind of what we were talking about, but it's another way to do it. So if it's not a game, well, you can't sync it. So, anyways, we still do need some type of app backup to the cloud, but. So we've seen multiple, leaks, speculations about games. So we know there's something coming around a Google Game Studio, a Google Games Play Games, but there seems to be something missing. So a piece of the puzzle, we see everything lining up in a row surrounding something, but it's not complete yet. So is it going to be a separate app? Is it going to be a piece of hardware? And that brings me to the next speculation that I have, and that we have here at Android Authority. We think there's going to be a Google TV reboot. I don't know what to call it, so we'll call it that. Feel free to call it anything.
I think we can call it a new platform, right? Isn't there an I/O session titled "The New Google TV Platform"?
Well, yeah. We see a session at I/O called the future of Android TV, and it's a Google TV session called the future of Android TV. So that makes a lot of sense. And when you read the description, it says learn how to develop on the new Google TV platform. So right there, that basically means that a new platform is coming, and it's maybe going to be Android. It's not going to be forked honeycomb anymore. And
Honeycomb was Android.
Well, yeah.
Bad Android.
So you start digging, you start thinking a little bit anymore. And, there's tons of companies that have these little HDMI sticks that they call them Google TV, but it's not. And then we have and NVIDIA and their gaming device, and then you have Ouya and their gaming console. You have all these Android games in its actual hardware. So I don't think that it's the Android Game Studio or Game Center or Play Games is going to be all software. I think that we're going to see a hardware device, and it's going to be a Google TV reboot. I mean, all the signs are pointing in that direction. I think that that's going to be Google's answer to that, and I think we're going to find out here in a few days, and we're going to be pretty excited that Google's going to take over the living room that way. Since Google TV, as awesome as it is, it hasn't been adopted by the masses. And what is adopted by the masses? Console games. Mm-hmm. Everybody has Xbox, PlayStation, whatever. So I think that's where they're going with that.
I don't know. I still think that that's going to be difficult for them to accomplish. If they want to go after the console market, they're going to have to do so by producing console-level games. If you want to have console-level games, you have to have console-level hardware to run those games. I don't care how good the Snapdragon 800 and the Tegra 4 and the Exynos, whatever comes after the Octa, are. They aren't going to be good enough to run what you can run on an i7 and a top-end NVIDIA graphics card.
And Android really supports x86. There's no reason that they shouldn't try to attack a higher-end console.
Well, there's still a slight hole, and I don't know if I can say this universally about Android, but I know that I can say this about all of the hardware that Android has to date run on. It's 32-bit only.
Yeah.
So, yes, it runs on x86, but I don't know if it runs on 64-bit. Is Android itself capable of addressing more than 4 gigabytes of RAM? I don't know.
Find out.
I guess we'll find out, here in the future what's actually happening. So some other speculations beside Android itself and besides new Google TV hardware, we know that Babel is pretty much coming, and chances are it's not going to be called Babel anymore. It's going to be called Hangouts, and that makes sense. The name makes sense. I really don't care what it's called. Like I've said, publicly before, it can be called. I won't say what I said it would be called. It can be called Poop Messenger, and I don't really care. I'm going to use it. The name really doesn't matter to me. It matters to other people, but that's just me. So, calling it Hangouts makes a lot of sense because Google is heavily driving Google Plus. Heavily driving Google Plus services home to users. So, calling it something that already exists or expanding upon Hangouts even further to make it a unified messaging platform, then that makes perfect sense to me. What do you guys think about that?
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, totally, man. You have to build off of your previous, reputation there, and it's not like there's anything wrong with Google's current services. They're just too many of them. I mean,
what I'm curious about is what will happen with Talk. That's what I'm curious about.
Well, the thing is, Talk and Hangouts are kind of already sort of half-assedly integrated in that you can launch Hangouts now from Talk, right? Like you used to be able to do video chats and audio chats through Talk, and now they've replaced that functionality with Hangouts. So I don't think that it'd be really difficult to replace Talk with just the chat box that comes in Hangouts and have that just be minus the video, right, for just a chat only. But the thing is, they've already got integrated into Hangouts phone calls, so why aren't they integrating voice already?
Yeah, it's also interesting because Talk is the one Google app that, of all the Google's core application suite on phones, is locked into the system partition on phones.
Yep. And it's not in the market.
Hopefully they have the foresight to make it able to be updated on the market easily for anyone. I would hope that any unified messaging comes just as an update to Talk, even if it's renamed and has a new icon, just builds off of that because Talk.
Well, I think that they would distribute it in a fashion that allows the Talk app to be suppressed, but otherwise the app itself would be downloadable from the Play Store.
A lot of
I think that might have to be how they handle it. I mean, because right now, think about it. So all these Android devices have Talk installed. And then now people go out and maybe it comes with Google Plus as part of the Google Plus Messenger, or it's a separate app. Who knows? However, it's going to be deployed. But So now people have talk. It might be confusing for people. What to
That's
use.
easy to overcome, though.
Well, you say that, but you're also smarter than the average bear.
Yes, but so is Google.
Okay.
Right. All they have to do is distribute it via the market. Have the Play Store look at it as an update to Talk, and as a standalone app.
If that's how it
And then when it
happens.
downloads itself automatically for the user, it suppresses the Talk app that's in the system that they can't remove at that point.
Dan, that makes sense
gives you
if
the
it's
new
going
app
to be
alongside
a
it.
replacement app. If it's going to be an upgrade to the current existing Talk app.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a standalone new app and replacement, but it'll be kind of the same way that Drive just suddenly replaced as an update Google Docs.
Yeah. I'm hoping it really takes that route because.
Yeah, Google knows how to code for the platform that they freaking designed, right? Like they can make this happen pretty easily.
Well, I guess we'll find out. So let's talk about some other apps. Gmail could be a lot better. It could look similar and act similar to Google Plus, with slide out navigation, so you're seeing all of your folders listed and they hide when you're not using them, and it could be slightly more colorful, it could be more holified, if you will. So I'd like to see a little. Gmail is very simple. I'd like to see it change a lot, like those renders we saw, maybe a month or so ago, where a fan put together some artwork and it looked a lot like Google Plus, but it was Gmail. I was a big fan of that. And John, I think you're going to talk about in here in a minute some things that happened along those lines, updating existing apps such as Google Shopper and Google Earth. But before we get to that. Maps. Google Maps, great, extremely powerful. We use it every day. We love it. But the iOS version is gorgeous. Not to say that the Android version isn't gorgeous, but the iOS version looks a little bit better. So maybe we'll get a more hollow-esque, a more hollow design with Maps. I'd like to see some type of updated design with it.
The music is worth mentioning too. It's like the last of the honeycomb Tron apps.
Yeah, how is this? How is music still look? Music hasn't been updated besides functionality since Tron Honeycomb. You've said it best. That it needs to get beautified. It needs cards. It needs to look like Google Now. And it needs to look like the new Play Store.
Yeah. It also needs better functionality. It kind of sucks right now, and the last update to it actually made it worse.
All right, so Google recently pushed updates for Google Earth and Google Shopper, and these new versions have the new slide-out menu, similar to Google Plus. So it looks like they're starting to update apps maybe to have that. But there's some menu inconsistencies that exist in current apps, and these new apps address some of that problem. So we're going to see more of this get fixed in the future. So right now, current problems with slide outs are nobody can really decide whether the action bar should stay anchored or should it stay, should the action bar stay anchored when the slide-out menu is opened? So should you always have the action bar there or not? As the menus, sliding in and out, sliding in and out. Some applications move the list out of the way as if the menu is underneath, it's hidden, and some make the menu appear as if it hovers over the main app. So there's a different implementation there. We really don't know, We need a guideline, Google. We need to say, this is how you do it. Always do it this way. The up arrow, the up caret, is used as a visual indicator for both slide-out menus and also for navigating back the previous way. So you don't really know as if you hit back, is it going to go back, or is it going to just pop the slide-out menu back? There needs to be some type of unification there. Someone say, yep, this is how you do it. Always do it this way. Um, so the solution to get rid of some of these inconsistencies, Google pushed an update, like I said, to Earth and to Shopper that showcase a 3-line menu icon similar to what you see on websites and also the Chrome overflow
Can you see
menu.
that on? I'm just holding it up on my screen.
Yeah, let me. All right, so those of you watching right now, John, hold that there for a minute. Let it focus.
Yeah, it's really. I mean, it looks just like the what they changed the Chrome menu to after the wrench. It's
Exactly.
just a
Yeah.
line menu that looks just like the Action Overflow too. It's pretty
Yeah. That I think you said it best.
self-explanatory.
It looks like Chrome. It looks like Chrome.
And
that means that there's a menu under there.
and if you slide it, there's a subtle little animation that actually makes the menu appear almost like the 3 dots smaller to indicate that it's really cool. It hovers over instead of just popping the list out of the way. It just hovers straight over like that, and
Nice.
it's a lot. It's just
So it's nice. It looks similar to Google Plus, but better because the menu. The menu
looks like a menu.
Yeah, the menu is a menu. the menu is a menu, so you know when you're going to bring out the menu and when you're not. So maybe we'll see this new design come to Gmail. Maybe we'll see it come to
Everything.
everything. Yeah, I mean I'd like to see it come to everything.
I'd like them to pick something and bring it to everything, not just to some things or most things, but to freaking everything.
Well,
Get a
a lot of
library
Google apps have their own It seems like every different development team or designer has their own slight interpretation of the Holo UI, and each app is slightly different depending on what they want to do. So it'd be nice to have a guideline.
I hope they put a library out for developers to take advantage of this, like the day that they show these applications off, because it needs to be, you can't fix Facebook and other ones like that, but you can at least get your other developers on board for one thing.
So let's move on here. Besides apps, what else are we going to see at I/O? Well, I think wearable tech is going to be popular. I mean, obviously, glass is a big craze right now, and I think Google will show us some nice use cases for glass, such as apps. Make it more than just notifications and sharing a little bit of data here and there. Maybe we'll get some nice demos or some nice information about some new apps that are coming out specifically for glass to make glass more attractive to the general public. And there's also been some rumors about an Android smartwatch coming from the Android team. So that's interesting. I'm curious to see if that rumor comes to fruition. What about you guys? What do you think about a Android smartwatch at I/O?
I'm not really wild about the smartwatch idea.
Half the reason I don't wear a watch is because I have a smartphone. But if I do wear a watch, it's going to be an Omega Seamaster or something. I'm not going to put a digital device on my hand again. I mean, I just like the simplicity of having one device to have to manage instead of having multiple.
Yeah, I don't need an accessory that's just a front end to my phone. It's not that hard to get my phone out.
It reminds me of the days when you had an MP3 player and a phone and a laptop and all that. I mean, it's almost like they're trying to circle back around to that just because the hardware vendors are trying to dig to find something to make money on.
All right, so I see what you're saying. You don't want a Pebble because Pebble is notifications and not a whole lot more than that. So what if it was stock Android and it did more? You could run apps on it. It was more than Google Now.
What app am I going to run on something that's a freaking inch and a half across?
Maybe you want to look at your tasks. You want to look at the weather.
Yeah, but this is all still just basic front end, right? Like it's still going to be pulling the data off my phone.
Well, we don't know that. I would assume so. It would pull it off your phone.
Otherwise, Jesus, now I have an other data plan for some freaking other device.
So, okay, so you know what I'd really like to see? I see what you guys are saying. I would like to see in the future the smartwatch do away with the phone. The smartwatch has my cell radios in it. It has GPS in it. It has Wi-Fi in it. It is my phone. and then I use glass to make all my phone calls. So I don't need a third device. I don't need a smartphone in my pocket. I have my smartwatch and my Google Glass, and that does everything for me.
See, and like, what I'd like to see is one device that's potentially not a smart anything, like not even something you can interact with necessarily, just a box that you carry with you that is your computing device for everything. And then you have your watch and your glasses and your tablet and your phone, or really not even the phone because you'd have the headphones through the glasses, but your computer and everything else just runs off that box by proximity.
Your own little power cube.
Yeah, and so you're always working on the same data. It's always unified because everything else is just a terminal. It's just a front end for it.
Okay. All right, so...
Which would also make all of those endpoints a lot cheaper because they don't need to carry all the sensors and all the everything else.
So in terms of hardware, chances are, rumors speculate that there's going to be some type of Nexus 7 refresh, a new Nexus 7, Nexus 7 reboot. Dear God, do not call it a Nexus 8. For that matter, don't say Nexus 5, and don't say Nexus 11 because those numbers don't mean a damn thing. Besides speculation on artwork and the internal numbering scheme for Google devices and Nexus devices, So I'm saying new Nexus 7 because I don't know anything else besides that. And chances, what's that?
I'm saying no, calling it the Nexus 8 because it's the next number is just
dumb
because then what happens when, okay, so if the next Nexus phone is the 5 and the one after that's the 6, is there then going to be a Nexus 7 phone?
Well, yeah, so what do you... No, it's the Nexus...
And what happens when the 7, 8, 9 runs up to 10?
Well, that's because 6 is afraid of 7 because 7, 8, 9.
14.
Right, but obviously they're going to have to do something to start duplicating numbers because they can't just keep incrementing them when they've already used ones in front of each other.
Yeah, I think it's a silly... and then people saying it's based on size. Well, because the Nexus 4 is...
4-point-something inch, and the next one is
it's
a
actually
7.
closer to 5 than it is 4, but whatever. And the Nexus 7 is a 7-inch, and then 10-inch for Nexus 10. But that doesn't mean that the Nexus 11 is going to be an 11-inch. This conversation is making us more dumb right now talking about it. So let's get back to the Nexus 7 reboot rumors, specs, and leaks and spec sheets showing up online. So we're hearing rumors saying it might be a 1080p screen and it might have a Snapdragon processor. Now, Dan, I think there's some things you want to say about this Nexus 7 Snapdragon processor. Am I right?
Well, we've been seeing rumors for a pretty long time now that this device is going to have a Snapdragon processor. And I've seen a lot of different rumors as to which Snapdragon processor it's going to have. Just the other day I saw somewhere running a headline about it having an S4 Pro, or the same thing that's in the Nexus 4. I've seen rumors about it having a Snapdragon 600, the same thing that's in the HTC One and the S4. And I've seen rumors very recently that say it's going to have an 800. I'm kind of skeptical about it having a Snapdragon 800 processor, though, because that is going to be a very top-end processor. And this is going to be a very priced low-end device. So I'd be very surprised to see the Snapdragon 800 debut in a $200 device. Although if it does, that would be a huge slap in the face of NVIDIA.
I mean, that processor is coming out. This is just as talking.
It's supposed to be coming out in devices that you can buy early third quarter. So June, July, August.
And let's say the new Nexus 7 isn't available until June or July. Well, which makes it a year past the last one, the original Nexus 7. So that could make sense on its availability. But still, you're not going to get top-tier, high-end, processor straight off the shelf the exact same day that a budget tablet launches. It could show up in a Nexus 10 in the fall, but seeing it, I just don't yet. No.
Yeah. One of our commenters mentioned this I'm not even going to try it, the last name there, asked which Snapdragon doesn't include a modem, and that's the S4 Pro, which is why I think that's actually a pretty legitimate rumor, because it doesn't include a broadband modem. It just includes Wi-Fi. So, I mean, that would still give them the freedom to pretty easily add any network support that they want, but it would also give them the ability to sell a cheaper version of it just by not having that hardware.
And one of our commenters, is saying they like the Nexus 7 HD, if it comes with a higher res screen, and that's cool and all, but I think a simpler name is better. We don't need to start tacking on numbers to the end of it,
especially when the current one is HD.
Yeah, it's just 720p.
Yeah,
and then we start getting into things like Asus Nexus 7 4G LTE HD, we don't need to do that to the Nexus line. Let's keep it simple. Let's keep it clean. Let's keep it sexy. And
yeah, in fact, I actually think that's something that Apple has done well with their branding, where they've done away with the numbers on the iPads. Right? It's just the new iPad every time, and the
we laugh at that, but I like that.
Yeah.
We're
releasing this one device. We're releasing it every year. It's always called the same thing.
And if you want the cheaper version, that you're getting last year's model if someone's selling you an iPad for cheaper.
Yeah, you're getting the 2012 or the 2013, right? Just like you're getting a Camry. It's always a Toyota Camry. It's just what model year.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't go out there. Oh, so what Camry do you drive? Oh, I drive a Camry 74. Oh.
Right. Obviously not the same thing as one that was made in 2012.
So you're driving a car that's 30 years old? No. This is the 74th edition of my.
Right.
Well, the other side is, even if you buy the same tablet 4 times that year, you're always getting a new one.
Yeah.
It's a new one every single time. It doesn't matter if it's the 4 or not. The next one's always newer than the last one you had.
Yep.
So besides a Nexus device, I think we'll see one. Chances are it'll be a new Nexus 7, just because the current Nexus 7 is almost a year old. So we're gonna have to see something to refresh it. And I want Google to let us know, make us want to buy the Pixel. I think the Pixel is very expensive, and it's not a device that everybody can afford. So make us want it. Do something with Chrome OS that is going to shock and awe us into wanting to buy the Pixel. Have all those bloggers out there that that wrote the Pixel off about how it was horrible. Have them eat their words and say, "Wow, when they said this device was for what's next, they were right. This device is for what's next." I want that shock and awe to come with Chrome OS.
Yeah, that would be nice.
So, I think we've talked a lot about what we'll see, what we think we'll see, some speculation, some rumors, some thoughts on Google I/O. So what I want you guys to do that are watching live right now, or if you're watching later, it doesn't really matter. Let us know in the comments what you would like to see at Google I/O, if you think we missed something, or if you think we're absolutely crazy, and we will see a Nexus 5, damn it, and we will see a Nexus 8, and everyone is going to buy the Nexus 11. Or maybe you think it's the Nexus 420.
It's not made by Samsung.
I'm still gunning for the Nexus 420. I swear I am. You guys see that post I made earlier? Anyways, so Bill Gates, everyone knows who Bill Gates is. He needs no introduction. He took to the news media and he said, Android users, you're frustrated. So what exactly did he mean by that? Well, I'm going to read you the quote here. He said, a lot of those users are frustrated. They can't type. They can't create documents. They don't have Office there. So we're providing them with the benefits of something they've seen and made that a big category, but without giving up what they expect in a PC. A little bit later, he goes on to say, Windows 8 Windows 8 is revolutionary in that it takes benefits of a tablet and the benefits of a PC and it's able to support both of those. So if you have Surface, all four of you, Surface Pro, you've got that portability of a tablet and the richness of a PC in terms of the keyboard, Microsoft Office, and of a PC. So, Dan, how do you feel that you've never been able to create a document on Android?
No, I can't say that's true. In fact, I've done that. And my Transformer Prime is quite good for content creation. And hey, wait, supports a keyboard. It doesn't necessarily support Microsoft Office, but it supports formats that Microsoft Office also supports. So,
such as Google Drive,
right?
Google Docs,
right? It's interoperable with Microsoft Office. It's not necessarily a full replacement. I can't do things like PowerPoint or Visio or a lot of other.
But for basic word processing, the stuff the average consumer is going to use, it works great. So, John, are you frustrated that you can't create documents with Android?
Well, I mean, there are so many platforms that can create documents, but Windows Phone 8 is the perfect example of how irrelevant the Microsoft Office argument is becoming to the average consumer. They don't even give a shit about it, to be completely honest. It's not a selling point anymore at all, and people are running to tablets because they don't have bloated software suites that confuse them, because most people, when Microsoft asked them what they would like to see come to the next version of Office, people would rattle off features that Office already had that they had no clue how to get to. So it's nice to say, oh, well, you can create this kind of stuff on there, but people just don't want to. They're not buying it for that. So
yeah. They're buying it so they can read the emails, not so they can write the 5-page report.
Yeah,
they're going to do that. They're going to sit down.
Think about how many features Excel has, or Word has, or PowerPoint has. They are loaded with an insane amount of features. Now think about how many features you actually use on your day-to-day basis. The average everyday functions can be done in Google Docs and Sheets and Slides.
And well, the other thing is
it's pretty easy to break the capacity of Google spreadsheets.
Yeah, and Surface is Surface is a decent compromise there, but it's not a laptop. I'm sorry, but the keyboard is not a laptop keyboard. It is not the same. It doesn't feel as good. If I want to do a lot of typing and a lot of creation, I'm getting a laptop or a desktop to do it. I'm not doing in-betweener that's not as good as one or the other at doing, and people have shown with devices like the iPad or Android tablets or phones that they're willing to pay for simpler devices that are catered to a singular purpose. People are willing to shell out money if it does that in a really good way.
Yeah.
It's not.
I think James Williams, one of our friends here on Google Plus, said it best a while ago when talking about Windows 8 and Surface Pro. He said that it doesn't do either of the functions that that it can do very well. It's like a half-assed tablet and a half-assed desktop in one. It can't do either one great, but it can half-ass each one of them.
Yeah, they overreacted to the problem and half-assed it at the exact same time.
All right, so Android users that are watching and listening, are you frustrated that you can't create documents? Do you need Windows 8 to come in and save the day? Is Windows 8 the revolutionary product at the end of the tunnel? Let us know in the comments.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I actually like Windows 8. I just don't think that it's any kind of a huge step forward.
So, John, we have some apps that got updated, and without boring us into the ground, let's talk about some of these apps.
IO13, since anybody that may be going in the upcoming week, you'll probably be interested in getting this one. You can scan attendee badges via NFC. You can schedule changes immediately. They're immediately synchronized between all of your devices. You have a lock screen widget for viewing your agenda on the go. You have vector-based maps. You have dedicated HDMI output for live streaming. Automatic Wi-Fi setup for attendees. That one will probably be very nice. There's an offsite attendee mode for live stream only viewers. You can use Google Plus for login. It has support for viewing office hours sessions, and you have improved support for devices with RTL locales. So if you're going to I/O, make sure you update your application. It's got a lot of goodies in there so you can make the most out of the conference. Spotify got a pretty significant update, with the biggest one being that you can filter and sort out your playlists and tracks better alphabetically, A to Z or Z to A. It also remembers what you were listening to the last time you logged out. Another one is Viber, which is a kind of an instant messaging application, and it got a very major, very good-looking holo redesign. So if you're, part of the community that uses Viber for doing messaging over data, that one's definitely worth looking into.
Okay. All right. I haven't tried Viber yet. I've heard a little bit about it, but I don't honestly know a lot about it. I want to try it one of these days.
I can't get excited for messaging solutions that require you to have to spam your friends and ask them to join.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's why I never got into WhatsApp, because it's only as cool as the 6 people that that use it. So if I'm not going to go out there and beg everybody I know to use another app, so that's why I'm looking forward to Babbel. So Dan, carriers, they do all sorts of cool stuff, right?
So AT&T's been doing a lot lately. They've launched LTE in some 16 more markets, so a pretty big expansion on their LTE footprint, trying, of course, to catch up to Verizon. Additionally, everybody's been a little surprised by T-Mobile's all-uncarrier, no-contract approach, and so AT&T is responding with their own no-contract subsidiary, I guess, called AO or AIO Wireless, except it's no LTE. It's going to be capped at 4 megabits per second on their relatively paltry HSPA Plus network. And you can get, for the low price of $40 a month, unlimited talk, text, and 250 megabytes of data. Megabytes of data.
Megabytes. So that's not a lot.
Yeah.
So for $55, you can step that up to 2 gigabytes, and then $70 gets you 7 gigabytes. So that's their answer to T-Mobile's much more affordable contract, no contracts. Because there you'll get $70, I think, is their totally unlimited everything with, actual 4G speeds.
If this included LTE, those wouldn't really be bad prices.
No, it wouldn't be bad prices.
If they had given you LTE. Right. And also, I don't get what
also, if their HSPA Plus was as good as T-Mobile's.
Well, the other thing is LTE costs them a lot less money to operate the network, so it doesn't make sense why they would do it on a network that costs.
Because they can keep crying about the spectrum crunch and charge people more. So why not?
Here's your plan. For the 3 people that'll buy into this, then...
Yeah. So, John, what updates have come out? I know you have a Galaxy Note, right? Did your device get updated, or was it another Note?
Ironically, on the 5th, Verizon pushed a 4.1.2 update to the Galaxy Note 2, but in Canada, the Galaxy Note, the one that's a year older, just got 4.1.2, so that's about what Verizon's on pace with, is year-old devices from Canada. So if you have the original Galaxy Note, you're going to get Jelly Bean 4.1.2, which includes a lot of improvements to Samsung's own applications, like you get the pop-up video browser, a lot of their premium suite, and even more important than that, you get the Jelly Bean features like Google Now and expandable notifications, and then it's a lot more buttery than what you had. So definitely an update worth grabbing.
Is that nationwide, or is it specific carriers?
That is a good question. I only have Canada listed here, so I would guess it probably. I would guess the majority of Canadian carriers are probably starting to get. I would imagine the Note was probably like it was here where it was limited on what carriers it was carried on to begin with anyway. So, not too familiar with Canada, sorry.
I guess we're going to have to get a Canadian correspondent. What we'll do is we'll talk to the guys over at Android Coliseum, and we'll those guys are pretty awesome, and we'll start bringing them in here when we have Canada carrier updates, and they can cover that segment for us.
You can also add a hockey news section for them.
And in Canada news, here's Ryan Moore with the hockey update.
So what other device news has there been, John?
We've got a rumor, because LG has an announcement tagged for May 30th, and it's Imagination begins with a capital G on the banner, so second edition of the Optimus G may be coming up. It'd be interesting to see what they have to announce, because the Optimus G Pro is a very competent device now, so it'll be interesting to see what they're...
yeah, and the G2's had some pretty monster spec rumors with a Snapdragon 800 and a 1080p screen and a 13-megapixel camera and all of the other bells and whistles that you can imagine.
Yeah, the LG's really jumped on getting the hardware out quicker than a lot of other...
yeah, and that helps a lot in this market.
Mm-hmm. On the root, for rootin' and rhyming, Paranoid Android, chat heads, multi-window support. This is their edition of it called Halo. If you haven't seen the YouTube videos on that, definitely look around and find it, because it's really cool how they do it. This is what they consider to be how you do multi-window on Android. It's available for every single application as a notification replacement, and it's very similar to Facebook's chat heads, where you can move it around anywhere on the screen. You can be in the middle of a game. If you check a notification, it pauses the foreground application so you can handle it, and it uses their hybrid engine to only take up a fraction of the screen, kind of as an overlay. You do what you got to do, and you go right back to the foreground app and start it right back up. The development's really coming, pretty fast. They're pushing alphas out. They haven't really put the source code out for everybody that ports from a Nexus, but if you have a Nexus device, you can try this out, and it's really coming along very quickly, and it's the best multitasking solution on Android that I've seen so far. It's a lot better than things like Samsung's multi-window, because it's static. It's not, you're not sitting here controlling different parts of the screen. It's in one place. It's consistent, and it's really, really convenient.
It's nice to see the innovation that's coming out of the custom ROM community and some of the ways that they're pushing the Android stack to do so much more than what it does out of the box.
Whoever does Paranoid Androids, like the names for what they come up with, really needs a job with an OEM, because Halo just makes sense and it's just really cool. If that was on a sheet advertising in a carrier, that would just seem like a really cool feature to...
Yeah. No, that's true. So in other rooting news, CyanogenMod 10.1 has rolled out RC1 to some 40 devices, and RC2 is now starting to roll out as well, or I guess soon will be rolling out. This is really very, very ridiculous. They're basically pushing a release candidate release so that way they can have one out before Android 4.3 or 5.0 or whatever new version it is comes out on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Wednesday. They've been working on 10.1 for 6 months now and are finally getting a release candidate. And I get it. They support some 40 devices, and that's ridiculous. I don't think anybody else supports that many devices. Right? Like, I'm not trying to knock how hard that is. I've worked on CyanogenMod projects in the past. I totally understand what it takes to get all of these devices merged in and working together in one code base. It's a pain. But that's also made worse by all of the extra stuff that CyanogenMod does now. They used to be a lot more streamlined and simple, and it was a lot more about getting more and more devices to support basic, almost straight up AOSP support with some very light modifications on top. And they've gone very much the same way that a lot of the OEMs have, where it's such a heavy level of customization that it takes so long to update it for all of these devices. And so as they keep trying to support more and more, it's just going to slow things down more and more. I mean, seriously, pushing out an RC just in time for the next version of Android to come out, like, what, you didn't know there was going to be another version of Android? Google has said for quite some time, one release every 6 months, 2 per year. Right? Like, this isn't news. They haven't kept people in the dark about it. They've been saying it for years.
Well, CM9 and CM 10.1 also hit their final release stage a few days before, or the same day that.
This is becoming a habit for them.
I forget what it was, but the day it must have been when 4.1 came out. So it would have been CM9 finally hit stable the day of IO last year, because nobody believed the new version of Android was coming out, and then the day that it came out, CM9 became stable, I remember. But now it was stable for a while, don't get me wrong. There might have been a bug or two, and they wanted to clean up as many bugs as possible before saying it was stable. And I'm sure that's the same way that it is now. It's stable enough. There's a bug or two that it isn't a showstopper that they were just trying to tweak here and there. Yeah,
but you know what? CyanogenMod used to be the cutting edge of the custom ROM community. And when they're struggling to put out a release candidate, not even a 10.1 release, but a RC 2 days before I/O.
Yeah, I think there's really a market. You remember OMGB and what was rumored to be OMX. I think there's a market for a ROM like that now that's just straight up from source Google. Compatibility modifications only.
And I think I think this is why Paranoid Android. Remember, we had them on the show a few months back.
That's why they switched to their own fork, because waiting for CyanogenMod becomes such a pain now.
Yeah, they didn't want to deal with their bugs, and they didn't want to wait for nightlies to become stable and release candidates and monthly builds. They didn't want to do that. They wanted to do their own thing. So now they're based off AOSP, and they're tearing shit up. I mean, they're doing a lot. They're doing the most innovative things out of any custom ROM right now.
No, I have to agree. And I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm dissing the CyanogenMod devs, because they do a lot of really hard work, and I'm friends with a lot of those developers, and I'm not saying that they aren't working their asses off. They are. But I think that if they had some better project management and some better organization in terms of the way they control the process, broke out some of the customization, abstracted that away in terms of development, not just in terms of abstracted in code, but the actual management and life cycle of it abstracted away from the rest of the ROM development, they could move things along a lot smoother and a lot faster. Right? You don't need to have your entire ROM at a release candidate stage because this one app isn't done everywhere. That sounds like the ROM's fine, it's just this one app that's not yet ready to RC. So don't release them at the same time, right? You don't need to.
Either way, CM does amazing work.
They do. They absolutely do.
It would be nice to have things hit stable faster, but there's always things such as running unofficial, unstable builds on your phone, such as the HTC Droid DNA, which today finally got a working camera. So I actually flashed it on my phone for the first time. We've had a bastardized ROM, and I'll call it that because that's what it was for a long, long time. But there was no sound, or the sound worked, and then you could make a phone call, but phone calls sound didn't work. And slowly it's been getting more and more and more stable. And finally today, Chad. You remember Chad from the HTC Incredible days, Dan?
Yeah.
Well, he got the DNA. I'm going to say 2 months ago. And he basically said, all right, I'm not messing around. We're getting you guys a stable ROM. And he just been busting his ass. And he got camera working today. And you know what? I can take pictures, front-facing, rear. I took like literally 100 photos earlier just trying to break it. I did get a camera force close. I rebooted and it was fine. But, I don't normally take 100 pictures in a day. So I'm happy. And it's AOSP, and it's AOSP for my DNA. I like this phone now. I have hated this phone for the past couple months, but I actually like it now. And
Until Thursday rolls around, and then
Thursday rolls around, and something happens, and a new Nexus or the Motorola X phone rumors become confirmed, and then I'm like, no, I need this phone. But this okay. Let me say this: now that the DNA has CM10.1, this can safely last me until I get the next phone. Because I was getting scared. I didn't know what I was going to do. I can't. I didn't know what I was going to do. I couldn't go to a Samsung TouchWiz phone. I need AOSP or a phone that supports a AOSP based ROM. So now I'm happy with this phone. Mwah! I love this phone. It can make it. Well, I can make it last. Maybe I don't love it, but I can make it last until the X phone or who knows, whatever comes out. Even if I'm still hopeful that the X phone comes out on Verizon. Anyways, enough rambling about me. Dan, anything patent worthy this week to yell about?
Yeah, so the FTC and the DOJ have been taking comments on patent trolls, basically. They call them non-practicing entities, or NPEs, a nice happy acronym. But that's a term that Newegg, for one, doesn't really think applies. In fact, they wrote in a brief and said, no, these are patent trolls, and went pretty into detail about why they are trolls and the definition of the word troll and how what these companies do is exactly that, and then proceeded to call them trolls throughout the rest of the brief. It was a pretty well-written brief beyond just the troll part. Like they raised some very good points and really were expressing why patent trolls are not just making it hard for the likes of Samsung and Google and HTC and Motorola, but for Newegg, because some troll has some obscure patent on some piece of some web technology and then runs around suing people like Newegg for having it on their website, as though all of Newegg's profits is because of some button somewhere on one page of their website. And so they have to defend themselves or else settle because it's cheaper than trying to defend themselves. And this isn't the way the company should have to do business. And I, for one, agree with Newegg. So hopefully the FTC and the DOJ start listening to all of these companies that are writing these briefs and do something about the problem. Meanwhile, in the Apple v. Samsung case, Google, along with Red Hat, HTC, SAP, and Rackspace are trying to file an amicus curiae brief in the case. Apple, unsurprisingly, has opposed it, complaining that Google is an interested party, which on the one hand is kind of true, but on the other hand, Apple has been very careful up to now to exclude Google from its legal underhandedness. So it's interesting now to see them jumping out and saying, no, wait, Google is an interested party here. They're essentially, in their filing, they equate Google to a co-defendant. So it's a little interesting to see Apple take that position. The other problem there, though, is even if you take Google off that list, HTC is the only other company that has a hand in the mobile software business at all. Rackspace, SAP, and Red Hat aren't making mobile phones or mobile operating systems. So the brief is still going to come in, even if Google's name doesn't end up on it. So Apple's kind of wasting their time on opposing it, but they like to do that a lot. And really, other than that, there hasn't been a whole lot of patent news in the last week or so.
Well, that's good. The less patent wars, the better.
Yes.
It's honestly like a segment we have to report on, but we don't want to. I wish.
We want there to be no news.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, we want the last news to say, okay, this State Department, Justice Department ruling is going to alleviate all patent trolls and fix everything.
No, I want to see the appeals courts hand down rulings that say, stop acting like petulant children and go see our binding arbitration. Deal with it. Fucking negotiate a contract and sign it.
Okay, so I think that wraps up for the week. So remember, a few days from now, Google I/O, all sorts of candy is coming your way. If you want to check out the sessions, you're not sure, when a session is engineering you're interested in, you can download the Google IO13 app, and then you can go ahead and browse all the sessions and go and add them to your schedule. So even if you're not going, like me, like Dan and John, we can go and create a schedule of what sessions we want to watch and build our own schedule. So I would say if you're a big Android fan, big Google fan, or you just want to know what the hell's going on, feel free to do that. And then we will be back next Thursday on time to recap everything and hopefully sing from the heavens about the awesomeness that happened the previous 3 days. So feel free to check us out on SoundCloud.com/Android Authority, YouTube.com/Android Authority, as well as Facebook.com/Android Authority. We're also on YouTube. I already said YouTube, didn't I?
Yes.
See, Scott normally does this. I'm messing it up. I always say
Google Currents.
I always say, hey, Scott, why don't you check us out? So we're on. Yeah, hey, I set up Stitcher Radio. I know we're on there. So Stitcher Radio, we're on there. We're on Miro. We're pretty much everywhere. Currents, and we have our own app. We've had it for a few weeks now. It's pretty awesome. If you don't want to use Currents and you just want to have your own Android Authority app, check it out. And we will see you next week. Have a good night.